Okay. Okay. Fine. Okay. Good morning, one and all. So today in this particular session, we are going to discuss about the second part. Actually, it's not. It's related to the part one itself, but we just divided. I just divided this particular first unit into different parts. So we will be having some around three parts here. So part one we already discussed it, which actually consists of nothing but the introduction related to your Internet of Things. Followed with that, we also discussed about the physical and the logical design related to your Internet of Things. And coming to your logical design, in the previous session, we discussed about the different communication models what we have and using these models how the devices actually communicate with other devices. So in this particular session, we'll be discussing about the remaining portion that is nothing but the communication APIs. Okay. Followed with that, we'll be discussing about the other concepts. So you people can access this particular channel. So using this channel, you people can get all the videos related to whatever the sessions we have concluded. I have just uploaded to this particular channel. I have created it. So you people can basically make use of this and you can go through the videos. Apart from that, using this, I will be uploading your notes in this particular blog. Well, I didn't start yet. So maybe within 2 or 3 days, I will start it up so that you can access the notes and all related to that particular content. So basically, we people know that what are the textbooks we are preferring. So all the diagrams what you people are seeing in this particular sessions are actually based upon this particular textbook we have here. So that is nothing but Internet of Things, A Bhagya and V Madhi Sethi. So based upon this particular textbook, I have prepared the slides as well. The diagrams are related from this particular textbook. So this is the textbook which you people have to prefer in order to access the data. Well, coming to the content part here, so basically the first and foremost thing today we are going to discuss about here is application APS, okay, application program interface. So in the previous session we discussed about the communication models. What are the different communication models we do have? We almost discussed in and around 5 different type of communication models, okay, like public by subscribe model, client server, request by response model, exclusive paid model. In that way we have discussed about some 5 different type of communication models. Well, in today's session, we'll be discussing about the communication APIs. Well, those models are used in order to communicate, right? So in order to communicate between the devices, how those models can be used? So definitely we require some kind of interfaces. That interface is what we are calling it as application program interface. Now, using this particular interface, we will be trying to connect our devices to the different applications, and based on that, we'll be performing operations. How the communication takes place, that we'll see. So in this particular subject, we will be actually dealing with two different type of communication APIs. Well, we do have many different type of application program interfaces, but basically in our subject, we are going to deal with only two APIs, that is REST-based communication APIs, followed with we have WebSocket-based communication API. Well, REST is nothing but representational state transfer. So this is a full form. We'll discuss in the coming session, in the coming slides. And this is one type of API which is used by our different applications to get communicated to our electronic devices, or we can say that is but the Internet of Things. Okay, whatever, like for example, temperature and humidity sensors are there, which have been deployed in the environment, okay, natural environment, and we wanted to get communicated with the help of an application. We have developed a mobile application using which we want to communicate with that particular. We want to get the data from that particular devices which are deployed in the environment. So what happens here, how we can use it, how we can get the data from those particular devices, how those devices can actually transfer the data to our mobile phone in our application is based upon this particular application program interface. In the similar way, we have, this is another type, we have WebSockets. Well, this is mostly used for providing web services, and using these services, we people can create or design different web applications, and based on that we can try to get the data from the devices. Okay, so these are the two APIs we are going to discuss. After that, we have something called as very important IoT enabling technology. So in which particular sector, or in which particular field we will be using this Internet of Things concept, that is what actually described in this. So here the first and foremost thing what we have is nothing but wireless sensor network. Well, everyone might be familiar. So since we people are deploying the devices in an environment which need to be communicated using a wireless medium, so definitely we require wireless sensor networks. This is most important. And apart from that, the technology which mostly uses Internet of Things is your cloud computing. So since all the data which has been generated by our devices, which have been deployed in different sectors, they actually read the data and they transmit that information into the cloud. And from the cloud, we actually access the information and try to perform different operations. That is nothing but the raw data we get from the cloud. And from that raw data, we try to convert that into some kind of information, right? We already discussed it. And from that information, we try to gather or we try to infer the knowledge. Okay, so that is what is saying in this particular scenario. Then we have big data analytics, where we'll look around for that particular thing. And then we have communication protocols. Obviously, in order to let our devices communicate with other devices or as well with other applications, we require some protocols. And based on these protocols only, we people can transmit the information. So that's all we are going to discuss in this particular scenario. Followed with embedded system. Well, embedded systems are nothing but, I'll just give an example so that you can understand easily. We people usually have micro ovens in our home, right? Similarly, we do have a personal air conditioners, we may be having a refrigerator or washing machine. Now these machines are automated, right? So whenever we want to turn on our AC, so we can do it using manually. So what happens after certain time, for example, in your room, you want to decrease the room temperature. Whatever the room temperature is there, you want to just cool it up. So what you will do, you'll set a target. Now the sensors present in that particular system, that is nothing but your air conditioner, based upon the sensing, whatever the temperature you have set for that particular target. Now, if the room temperature is not to that particular level, it is more than that, automatically the AC will turn on. And when the room temperature comes to the target what you have set, that is nothing with the threshold what you are setting, maybe 25 degrees or 24 or 23, automatically the system will turn off. Okay, so whenever again the room temperature increases, automatically it will turn on. So this mechanism, whatever is taking place, that comes under embedded system, because the system, the air conditioning system can perform only those operations. What are the operations it can perform? Either it can cool the room or it can make it hotter. Okay, only these two things it can do it. Apart from that, it cannot do any kind of activity. So means very tiny specific kind of tasks are getting executed using the system. That is what we call it as embedded system. Then we have something called as IoT levels and deployment. As I told you, based upon our requirements, we have different type of levels. So here we have some 6 different type of levels here. We'll be discussing one by one. Okay. So initially, like I told you, your seniors have constructed different projects. Those are based on IoT, but we cannot call them as IoT because those are smart devices, what they have actually constructed. So those things actually comes under here. Okay, so that comes under maybe IoT level 1. So whenever you people are connecting your sensors to a particular device as well as to a cloud, this is your device, your smartphone, where you're getting the data, as well whatever the data is generated by this temperature sensor is stored in the cloud. Then if this triangle is been formed, then we can call it as some 3, 4, 5, 6 levels. Okay, based upon this scenario, these levels are actually getting generated. So we will look around this. Not maybe may not be we may not be cover these particular levels in today's session, but in the next session we'll definitely try to cover all the 6. So let's begin the session now with the communication APIs. So first and foremost, what we have here is nothing but REST. And as I told you, the full form for the REST is representational state transfer. Okay, so this is the communication API which is actually used in order to transmit the information between the client and server. The client is nothing means here the client want to access some information from the server. He is trying to establish a connection with the server. Okay, so when he is establishing a connection, we definitely require application programming interfaces. Now using these interfaces, we people can actually try to get the information from the server. Okay, so this is the pictorial representation. Whatever you're seeing here, this is a pictorial representation of your REST-based API. So if you look at here, we have here a client. Here we do have a server. Now in between, these are the data packets that have been transmitted between client and server. Maybe these packets are for establishing a connection from client to server, or it may be some request being transmitted from client to server, and based on that. Now if you observe here, this server is actually connected to a database. Resource is nothing but this is you people can assume as a database. Now from this database, all the data is represented in a format of URI. Okay, whenever our server requires the data based upon the request received from the client, it will actually call the URI for that particular data. If this particular server will have a list of URLs, okay, or we call it as URI, Uniform Resource Identifier, and with the help of this particular data will be accessed by the HTTP server, and this server will transmit the data to the client, okay, but in a format, whatever the format or whichever way it has to be performed, whichever way it has to develop it. Now, if you look at here, in between these packets, whatever we are transmitting, I think you people are familiar with this particular protocol, right? HTTP. Obviously, we are actually performing an application-oriented point of view. We are transmitting the data, so definitely we need to use the protocol called HTTP. Well, this protocol provides some different sets of commands, or we can also call it as methods. So what are the methods we have? These are only few methods that are already that have been described here. But in the previous session, when we were discussing about the communication protocols, there we have already discussed about them. Okay. So here, the first one we have is something called as get, put, post, and delete. If you talk about get here, so get is nothing but in Java programming, you might have used this commands get, put, and post. Okay, so these are the commands used. So based upon these methods, we may try to access the information from the server. Same way, the server might be transmitting the information based upon this particular method. Now, apart from that, the payload, there is a REST payload. This is most important here. So it actually consists of two different type of packages, something called as JSON, XML. So what do you mean by JSON is nothing but this is mostly used for media applications. Like you people try to access a page from a server which actually consists some kind of images, okay, or it may consist of some kind of what we call videos, right? So in order to transmit those videos and images, this package is most important when you come across this REST-based APIs. Same way XML. XML is mainly used for transmission of data. It is used for transmission of data. That is nothing but whatever the content is represented in a sentence format. Okay, that all comes under the data. Okay, whereas coming to images and what we call videos, those all things comes under this particular package called JSON. XML cannot handle this image, what we call images to certain extent it can handle it, but whereas coming to what we call media and all, it cannot handle. So definitely we require a separate package. So that is what we call it as JSON. Okay, so this is using these particular packages, we actually transmit the data from, or the client try to access the information from server. And remember one more point here, something called as resource allocators. So since resources, okay, so whatever the request the client is sending to the server, so it has to send a response to the client. So when it wants to send a response, it has to prepare that particular page. So in order to prepare a page, it has to get the content from this particular resource database. How it is getting it? Using URIs, okay, Uniform Resource Identifiers. So each and every data will have some kind of uniform resource identifiers using which it will try to get the data, then it will prepare the page, and that page will be transmitted to client using these methods. This is what the whole scenario related to your communication protocols, okay, REST based. Now coming to what kind of model this particular API uses is nothing but request response model. So what do you mean by request response model? It's very simple. The client is going to first make a request to the server, and server will respond to that particular request. That is what it comes under request by response model. Well, in communication model, we already discussed the first and foremost communication model. What we discussed is request by response model. And moreover, when we discussed it, what we actually said is in this particular model, now, every request that is been transmitted from client to server is independent. Like first time it is sending some request, this is independent of the next request sent by the client, another request. So all these three, one, two, three, all these three requests are independent of each other. Means it is a stateless protocol. It is a stateless protocol. Means every request you people have to transmit the address related to the client, what data is required, everything in this particular request. So that is what it's saying. So it is a stateless protocol since it follows request by response communication model. Okay, now well this particular model has certain, okay, sorry, this communication API has certain constraints. Okay, constraints are related to with respect to different components. So what are the different components we do have? Let us discuss. So here first we have constraint to client by server. It's very simple. You people can easily understand. I'll explain with a small example. Now client by server, they do have certain constraints. What are the constraints? Let us talk about client side first. Client, for example, he is making a request to the server. Client is having a constraint that he should not bother from where the data is coming. For example, you people are actually opening a Google Chrome and you're typing www.google.com, right? And after that, you people might be want to access your Gmail, so you're clicking on Gmail. Well, as the client, you people are not bothered from where that particular page is coming. As soon as you're clicking on a Gmail option, you people get a page which consists of username and password. You are not bothered as a client from where that particular page is coming. But who is concerned about that particular page is the server. Server is it's server's responsibility. He should know from where that particular page is coming, right? So whereas coming, that is a constraint with respect to the client. Whereas coming to server, server is also having a constraint here. What is the constraint is he should not bother about client. Means which particular web browser the client might be using, he should not be bothered. The server should not bother about what kind of web browser this client is using. He may be using a Google Chrome, he may be using Opera Mini or UC browser, or we have Mozilla Firefox. Whichever browser he might be using it, it is not business of this particular server to be concerned about. What he should be concerned about is how to represent the data in that particular browsers. That's it. That should be the concern of a server. Similarly, client should not be concerned about from where the data or the page is coming up. He should be concerned about only the information related to how he's sending the request. Okay, so that is okay. That is what the constraint we have in client by server. Next, we have stateless. Since we already said that this particular API, this REST-based API, uses a request by response model, right? So already, what do you mean by request by response? I told you in the previous slide. Each request sent from client to server is independent of each other, right? Each request. This is your client and server. So every request sent from client to server is independent. So this is what we call it as a stateless. Now here, that is what is saying that client and server should be independent. Okay, they have certain limitations. Okay, so what it is whatever the information request from the client to server should contain all the information necessary. That is nothing but since as I told you in the previous slide, each request, now this first request when the client is sending to the server, it should contain all the information related to client, means from which IP address it is coming, okay, what is the request is asking. So next time when he is sending another request here, immediately after that, again, like google.com, then Gmail is the next request. So when you're sending Gmail again from client to the server, he has to provide all the details again, like which IP address he is coming from, what is the MAC address of his system, okay, what is the request he is sending, all that information should be present. So that is the constraint related to your stateless. Next, what is talking about here is cacheable. So I think you people are familiar with cache. Cache is nothing but small memory. What we can say here is nothing but cookies. Okay, it is nothing but a cookies we are used in our system in order to store the latest information which we have accessed from the web server. Like you people might be surfing many shopping so shopping related websites. So when you're doing it, what happened? Whichever the previously or the most recently you have searched for, that will be shown to you in the beginning itself. Okay, how it is showing it means that information is stored in the cache. So here what is saying, between the client and server, the data whatever is transmitted from the server to the client, it should be cacheable. It should be defined whether that particular data can be cacheable or it cannot be cacheable. Okay, so these two terms are most important. Means what it means to say, whenever the response is getting from the server, in that if he is representing that this data is cacheable, that means this information can be stored in the web server, web browser. So the client might be using any web browser. Now that web browser can store that particular information. That is what we call it as cacheable. Now if the data which is received from the server says that the data whichever I'm sending is sensitive and it cannot be cacheable, then the web browser cannot cache that particular information. This is something like your username and password. Okay, based upon your username and password, you people might open an account. Okay, so when you're opening an account, it is displaying you the total amount in your account. So what will happen? This cannot be cacheable. Why? Because if that can be cacheable, anyone can try to access your web browser just simply by hacking it up, and it can try to get the information. So here, when that data is transmitted from your one of your bank accounts to you, it will indicate that it is not cacheable. Well, remember, this we cannot see. This information we cannot see. This is for your web browser. The web browser will get the information. And if you people are much more familiar with your web browser, you people go to the settings, and there you people can try to find this cacheable and non-cacheable kind of content. Okay. If time permits, I'll show you. Next, we have something called as layered systems. So here, layered system also have certain limitations. What is the limitation is that since if I mean we have layers here, so each layer will perform some kind of functioning, right? So the upper layer should not have access to its upper layer. Okay, so any layer should not have access to the upper layer. It should have access to its immediate lower layer. Okay, so that is what the constraint we have related to your layer system. Then we have uniform interface. This is most important here. What it means to the uniform interface is between the client and server, whatever the communication takes place, it should be uniform in nature. It should not be like non-uniform. If it is non-uniform, the whatever the functions the client is trying to perform, he may not be able to perform it properly. Okay, it should be very much uniform, like username and password related to your bank account is transmitting. It should be uniform, means it should be encrypted properly, and then it should be transmitted to the server. If that case is not working out, then it's highly impossible to, means we are providing a third party a chance to access our information. So here, whatever the interface that takes place between the user, I mean client and server, that should be uniform in nature. That is what he's saying. The last but not the least is code on demand. Well, what he means to say here, the server can provide, okay, code for execution, something like your JavaScript, it can provide it to run in your application. Well, but this is optional. Why? Because mostly no one provides this code on demand, because only based upon if you're requesting, then it will be provided, but mostly it will not be provided. The reason is there is a possibility that using code, some people who are very good in programming, they can try to hack our systems. So mostly coding will not be transmitted, but if the user is requesting for a code, then it can be provided by the server. So these are the constraints what we have related to your REST-based application program interface. It's very easy. First one is client server. The client should not bother about the data from where it is coming. Then it is a constraint of a server. Server should not bother which web browser the client is using. Stateless, what we are saying is each and every request transmitted from client to the server is independent of each other. So since it is independent, we need to provide all the address. We need to provide all the information in each and every request we are transmitting from client to server. Cacheable is nothing but whatever the data we people are receiving from the server, whether it can be cached or not, that information should be provided by the server, so that based on that the server, the web browsers can of the client can try to store the information, or it may not store the information. Layered approach is nothing but the below layers can be accessed by the upper layers, but the upper layers cannot try to access the information from the higher layers. That is what it means to say. Simple example is our education strategy. Like we have a principal sir, HOD sir, class representative, I mean class teachers, followed with what we call class representatives. Well, class representatives can access the information or can make use of the students within the class, but they cannot control the class teacher. Now the class teacher can control the class representative as well as the students in the class, but they cannot control the HOD sir. And HOD, when it comes to it, they can control the class teacher as well as the class representatives as well as the members of the class, but they cannot directly control the principal. Same way the principal can control. Okay, I think you people might have understood. That is what we call it as layered system. So there are certain constraints, right? HOD cannot control the principal. That is a constraint, limitation there. Same way class representative cannot control the class teacher. That is the limitation. Next we have something called as uniform interface. What we are doing exactly in uniform interface? Nothing but whatever the data we are transmitting from client and server, that should be uniform in nature. There should not be any kind of misconspiracies or something like that. Final is code on demand. So based upon the request from the client, the server will be providing the codes in a format of JavaScript or another format that can be executed there. Well, this is a simple model how the client and server communicate with each other. So whatever the architecture we have seen in the previous slide, sorry. So that is what actually represented here. If we see that there is a first and foremost, we are getting a connection establishment between client and server. So this is the independent first request, independent request. This is also independent request. Sorry, this one. And this is the independent response, independent response. Now, if you look at here, we have a request. The client is sending a request to the server, and during this transmission from client to server, it is using these methods. What are these methods? These are actually related to your HTTP methods. These are HTTP methods. Okay, hypertext transfer protocol methods. So what we have: get, put, update, delete. Okay, now we have a payload also, since we might be transmitting some information, or we might be transmitting, like, for example, if you talk about your Facebook account. So in your web browser, you people are opening your Facebook account, and in that you are uploading your image, right? So you people might have went to someone's wedding or some function was there. You people have taken some snapshots and you wanted to upload in your Facebook. What you people are going to do? You log into in your web browser, the facebook.com, and then what you are going to do? You are going to upload that image. Now this image has to be transmitted to the server, right? So that cannot be done using this HTTP. Definitely we require a payload. So since it is a media based application, so we require JSON. Okay, and along with that, you might be tagging something like wedding, like something like hashtag wedding, hashtag friends party, something like that. Now that information needs to be transmitted. So that is data is transmitted using XML. So along with this request, we need to also transmit payload. Now based upon this particular request, the server is going to respond. How it is responding? Maybe that image got uploaded, or it will send some message saying that your video got uploaded, or your image got uploaded. That information is provided in a format of response. Again, it is transmitting a new request. The client is expecting a new request now. So again, it has to provide all the details and then it has to transmit. That's why it is called as stateless protocol. Stateless means each and every request what we people are transmitting is independent of the next one. This request doesn't know about this particular request. If I'm sending another request here, this request will not know about this request and the previous request. That is what we call it as stateless. If we talk about stateful, then that means first time the connection is established between the client and server. After that, the communication takes place simultaneously between the client and server. Okay, so each time we need not have to provide the information in stateful thing. But here we are discussing about stateless. Every request we need to transmit all the data related to our client. That is what is saying in the whole scenario. So this is the way how this particular REST-based application program interface communication takes place between client and server. Yeah, so since we said that we are using HTTP methods, so here I have displayed with a certain table representing the different methods what we have. We are accessing from our HTTP, okay, and what is the resource type, what it is using, and what resource type is nothing but a uniform resource allocated that we have seen in the architecture in the bottom, which the server can access. So if we have get, we have two different type of get. The first get actually what it does it is a collection URI, and the next get is element URI. Collection URI is nothing but the list of resources what we have that will be displayed to the server. Among those lists, I want to get a specific information. Now that is represented using elements. So two ways we can use this method get. Remember, these methods are related to the server. Okay, because only server can access those particular resources. As I represented you people in the previous slide, I'll just show you back once again so that you people can understand that. So that table actually meant between these two. How the server, you can see this server is trying to get access. These are the URIs, what we are calling element URIs, collection URIs. Collection is nothing but all these resources collection. This is what I'm talking about URI. Who can access this URI? Server can access. Client directly cannot access. The client can access only with the help of server. So this is what actually I'm representing here. So that is a table between a client and server. How we can use those methods? Yeah, so here two ways we can use the get method. Same way two ways we can use the post method, same put method and delete method. So if you talk about your post, same, we can use it for creating a new resource, or we can generally use it to access the information. Post is nothing but it will be like, you will not get the information on the URL. If you are using get, your whatever the information you're transmitting, that will be displayed in the URL. So anyone can try to hack it up. If you're using post, whatever the data you try to access it, that will not be represented in the URI. Okay, URL, whatever the URL through which we people are transmitting, that is what is representing in this particular scenario. Then finally delete also. So whichever the data is not required from the database, you might be trying to delete it up. So that is what is represented. So these are the different methods what we can use in order to access your something called using your HTTP protocol. We can try to access the database. Okay, who can access it? It can be accessed only by the server. This is what represented here. So here we call it as web APIs. Okay. Okay. Fine. Now, well, apart from this REST-based application, we have one more called as socket-based web sockets. So that's a small topic. I'll just explain here itself. So WebSocket, what exactly does is it is a stateful. Only difference is it is a stateful protocol. So REST is a stateless. As I stated earlier, it is a stateless, right? So statelessness, each and every individual request we are transmitting is independent. But whereas coming to WebSocket, it is a stateful, full duplex mode communication. The best example, the communication model, what this WebSocket APS can make use of is nothing but your exclusive pair. So what happens here? We do have a client here. We do have a server. Okay. So this is the client server. Now this client, what he will do is he will first try to access or establish a channel. First, the client will not send the request directly. It will first try to establish a channel with the server. Now, once this communication channel is established first time, so here channel is nothing but this is like a physical connection. You can assume like a pipeline between a client and server. Now the client can send the request. The server will respond to that request. Again, the client can send a request. Now, each time now this particular request has been transmitted, it is not independent. Means every time the client need not have to provide the information related to his properties. Okay, like from what is the IP address MAC? No, the first time this is what we call channel establishment. The first time it will establish a channel. Like it will, like it's something like the client is telling, okay, my IP address is this, my MAC address is this, I want to establish a channel with it. So server will respond to that and a channel will be created. Once this channel is created, now client can keep on sending different requests, and based on that the server will send the response. Now once this process is completed, the client has completed his task. Now he has to request, it has to finally the client has to send one more request asking him to close the channel. Remember here stateful in WebSocket, we need to close the channel or else it will keep on opening. Something like you people have a conversation with your friend on a mobile phone. So after the conversation, you people are not disconnecting it. You simply left that mobile phone aside, you as well as your friend. What will happen? It will keep on. The channel will be there as long as you are not disconnecting it. Okay. Maybe you had a conversation for 1 hour, but you did not close that particular channel. So it may be extended to 2 hours. So remaining 1 hour, we did not discuss anything, but we left the channel as it is. So same way here also, so if you're not closing, if the client is not requesting to close the channel, that channel will be available in the same manner until and unless we are closing it up. That is the only difference between WebSocket and REST-based. Okay. So once you close the channel connection request has been transmitted from client to server, the server will send a response that the channel is closed. Now the work is completed. Now the further process is next time whenever the client is trying to access, it can again send a request, get the channel established, then again the same conversation takes place. This is the difference. Okay, this is what the difference that we do have in this particular thing. Fine. Okay, next we come across something called as enabling technologies. So in this enabling technologies, we have the several different types. We already seen it. So where, in which sectors this IoT devices are being used, that we are going to discuss in this. The first and foremost is wireless sensor network, but this is most important here because whatever the network sensors we people are deploying, maybe a temperature sensor, humidity, other different type of sensors, and video sensors, other things, we are deploying it wireless. We don't have any kind of wired communication. We are deploying in an environment and trying to get the data. So since these sensors are wireless, so definitely we require, in this particular field, a lot of requirement is there related to your IoT based devices. Okay. So here what he's saying is three things are most important in wireless sensor networks. Something we have called end routes, routers, coordinators. I'll explain it. What do you mean by end routes are nothing but these are the devices which are being deployed in our environment. Like I told you, in our, for example, in the environment, I have deployed so many different type of sensor devices. Okay, sensors. Let us suppose this is a temperature sensor, temperature. These are the devices I have deployed in specific locations. Okay, nearby locations. Maybe after every 10 meters I have placed them. Now these devices are what these devices can communicate with each other, right? These devices can directly communicate with each other. Now that is what we call end nodes. These are what we call it as end nodes. And among these end nodes, there will be one more node, we call it as router. What is the main purpose of this particular router is, it has to transmit the data. It has to transmit the package, okay? So based upon the routes whichever are available. So whichever route is having a less traffic, this router has to decide, and based on that, it has to transmit the data. That is the main purpose of your router. Then what about the coordinators? Well, the coordinators part is it has to gather the data from this particular. So we have a coordinator here. Now, whatever the data is actually generated or captured by these particular nodes and nodes, this will be transmitted to the router, and the router will transmit it back to the coordinator. So coordinator is going to get the data from these end nodes with the help of a router. Not only that, if there are any upgrades are there that are also been transmitted to the from the coordinator, it will be transmitted to router, and router will send them to each and individual node. So they'll just route the packets. Okay, so that is what he's saying. So these three are most important, and moreover, this coordinator may be acting as a gateway too. Gateway means between the internet connection. So as I told you, this is your coordinator, this is your router, and here we have set of nodes. Now this coordinator will be connected to the internet, and from the internet it may be connected to your cloud service. Means whatever the data is gathered from these particular nodes is actually transmitted using a router to the coordinator, and this coordinator having an internet connection using which the data is stored in the cloud, and then based on that analysis is done. So that's why this coordinator sometimes act as a gateway. Okay, a gateway through which the data is transmitted to the cloud. Okay, so where we can use it, the best examples are here, weather monitoring system. So as I told you, in weather monitoring, what we need to do, we need to have a temperature and humidity sensors deployed it. Based on that, it will gather the data. Same way we have indoor air quality. We want to determine what is the quality of air we do have in our closed rooms. Okay, so that is determined using, for that also we can use this wireless sensor networks. Same with soil moisture. We want to determine the moisture of a soil. So in different areas, we can determine it. Okay, same with surveillance systems, smart grids, and structural health monitoring. So all these platforms, all these applications, we can use this wireless sensor concept. Now, which protocol we can use here is nothing but the best protocol, ZigBee. We already discussed it when we were discussing about layer. So in link layer, we had IEEE 802.15.4. So that is the one which uses a ZigBee, okay, which operates at around 2.4 gigahertz frequency. And what is the maximum data rate we have? 250 kbps per second, not more than that. It's in kbs. Remember, per second it can transmit. Why? Because these are very tiny in size. Since these devices are very tiny, they have very limitation. There are a lot of limitations are there. Their power range might be very less. Their what we call the battery backup. Okay, the lifespan of that particular device will be very less because they have very low battery backup. Okay, so that's the thing is discussed. Now coming to the range here, we have 0 to 100 meters. So what is the range of this ZigBee is like 0 to 100 meters. Now this is one of the feature related to your Bluetooth. Like you want to connect two different devices using a Bluetooth connection. There we can use ZigBee. What is the range we can use? Is 0 to 100 meters. So in between we can connect the devices, and based on that operations can be taking place. So this is related to your wireless sensor networks. Then we'll come across the most important one, cloud computing. The latest technology what we have here is cloud computing. So here what he's saying is this cloud computing actually provides services to whom? Services to the user based upon the most used method pay per use. Means based upon how much content you people are using it, based upon how much resources you are using it, you will be charged for that particular thing. You will not be charged for more. Okay, how much you are utilizing it, for that only you will be charged, not more than that. So this is one of the best part of your cloud computing. Now this cloud computing provide what we call services in different platforms. Like we have infrastructure as a service, we have platform as a service, and we have software as a service. If you talk about infrastructure, is nothing but here the users will be provided with different infrastructure. Like for example, I'll explain with a small example. We do have a laptop which has i3 processor. Okay. Now using this i3 processor, I wanted to write a code for machine learning and I want to execute it. So will I be able to get the output immediately if I'm writing a machine learning program? Well, no, it's not. It's highly impossible because it requires very high processors, like i7, i8, i9. Such a kind of processors are required in order to execute it. Or else, what will happen is it will take a lot of time. If you're writing a simple, you're creating a simple project, you're in machine learning using your laptop, which has a i3 capability. If you are executing it today, you may be getting a result after 2 days. Depending, you have to keep your system open for all the 3 days. Then only you'll get the. In this case, what happens? Okay, since I cannot buy i7, well, I can lend those capabilities from the cloud. Means we have a Google here. Google is providing cloud services. What I will do is I will access the resources from the cloud. Means I will make use of i7, i8 processor from the cloud. Means from the Google, I will lend it up. I'll borrow it. Okay, and for how many hours I am using it, based on that I'll pay it. Since I am directly accessing the high generation or high configuration system from the Google, so definitely a Google or we have Amazon here, so automatically it will get executed within a fraction of seconds or fraction of minutes or hours, maybe 2 or 3 hours. So I will be paying for 2 to 3 hours rather than buying a new laptop. That is what we. The best example for this is IBM Watson. IBM Watson provides a platform where you people can use two different CPUs of 8 GB. For 1 month, it's free. Yeah, for 1 month, 50 hours, you people can use it. Okay, so mostly we will not use for 50 hours, definitely. So it's free of cost. You people can access it. So even though you don't have a very high configured platform related laptop, still you people can write code on machine learning or cloud computing based platforms and you can execute it. Next, we have something called platform as a service. Well, in this, what happens is the user is provided a platform where they can deploy the tools. For example, if I talk about your Play Store in your smartphones, you people have developed a game. You can directly dump that game in your Play Store and the multiple users may try to access it and start playing that particular game. So that way, what happens here, the Play Store is providing a platform to the user to deploy his own applications, whatever he has developed. So that comes under. So here the cloud computing provides this service too. Finally, software as a service is nothing but here the user is provided with different softwares which we cannot buy. For example, the best example is your Office 365. Now, due to this team, you people are able to access Office 365 and you can do all the wonders whatever you want to do using that particular application. But if you want to buy it, you want to have that in your system, well, it's not possible. You may have to pay around some 4,000 or 5,000 rupees and you have to download it. Okay, and then you can start using it. So it's highly costly, right? But if you have, in case you really wanted to use it, you can use this service called software as a service, and based on that you can borrow it. Okay, same in Teams you people have it, right? So that is what it means to say software. Means what happens here, that Office, Microsoft Office is providing you people the software as a service to use it. Okay, if you are using, well, it has certain limitations. Beyond that limitation, if you want to use it, you have to pay. And how much you have to pay? That depends upon how much you are using it. Based on that only you have to pay. You need not have to pay more or you need not have to pay less. How much you are using it, based on that you will be paying it. So this is one of the latest technologies where exactly this IoT comes into picture. Next, big data analytics. So what do you mean by big data analytics? Here is nothing but a huge amount of data, very huge. Okay, with respect to that, something we call it as volume, velocity, and variety. Okay, all this is there, and this data is so much that we cannot process this data using traditional database. Whatever the traditional databases we are having, using, like for example, we have something called in DBMS, we are having Oracle, right? So So using that database, we cannot analyze the data present in this big data. We cannot use. That is what comes under traditional database. Using this database and the techniques what we have, we cannot process the data because this data is very, very huge. Like, some 100 TB or 200 TB, 500 TB of data is there. So using Oracle 5G or 6G or something like that, using different versions, if you want to analyze this 10 TB or 100 TB of data, it's not possible. That's highly impossible. It's impractical too. Okay, so for that purpose, we require this concept called big data analytics, and it is purely based upon three properties: volume, velocity, and variety. Okay, so if we talk about here, so we actually perform different what we call steps to this particular data. Since we have a raw data here, so we need to perform something called data cleaning, data munging. Data munging is nothing but wrapping up. Means if any of the value is missing, we'll apply some mathematical formula like mean, median. Okay, you people might have did when we were having a Vector tool lab. So in that you people might have done, whenever there is a value is missing, you people do a mean of the remaining value. So whatever it is coming, we are filling it up. That comes data munging. Same way we have something called data processing and visualization. All these things comes under that. Okay, so where we can use, these are some of the examples. Same examples, there is no much difference. Weather monitoring, air pollution, all this health and fitness, we'll be using this big data. Means it is just a collection. Like, if you people have your past 10 years, okay, 10 years of data related to your health, based on that we can predict it that okay, in the coming years how your health will be, we can predict it up. So that's the best example of this. Okay, Alex, I'll give you a small practical example of this. In America, one of the person was actually saved from the heart attack. Okay, it came recently around 2 years back. Okay, his smartphone was indicating him that he is going to get a heart attack on so and so day with so and so time. How it is able to indicate that means is nothing but it has analyzed the data which has been stored. Previously, its pulses, whatever the pulse, his heart rate and everything is getting recorded. Based on that, it analyzed and it came to know that by so and so date, he may get a heart attack. So he went to the hospital, he did all the tests, he came to know that there was a problem in his arteries. Okay, so based on that, he came to know, okay, so as he came to know earlier, he has taken the treatment and he was able to avoid that particular heart attack. So then in this way, this big data analytics plays a vital role. So what do you mean by volume here is nothing but, well, volume is nothing but how much amount of data. Well, there is no fixed value is provided that if this much data is there, that is what we call it as big data. The 10 dB I said, that may be big data, may not be a big data. 100 TB may be a big data, may not. So there is no fixed value. How much amount of data is there that we can say it as a big data. Velocity is nothing but how fast we can access the data, how fast we can analyze that particular data. That is what is talking about here. Velocity means with which fastness we can try to analyze the data is what we call it as velocity. Variety is nothing but here the data is of different varieties. Like we have structured, unstructured. Unstructured in the sense if you people have images, if you people are having videos that we are storing in the database, then that comes under unstructured data. For example, in the team software, we people are having these videos. We are storing these videos. Apart from that, you people are texting it up, right? So that texting comes under structured data because it is in a sequential way. But whereas coming to audios and images, it may not be in a sequential format. So that is what comes under unstructured data. So that is what he's saying. We have wide varieties of data. So this is all about related to your big data analytics. Then followed with that, we have one more thing, communication protocol. So coming to the communication protocol, these are widely used for transmitting the data. So we use this for something called data exchange format, data encoding and addressing schemes. The main purpose of this communication protocol is sequence control. So one after another, the packets has to be transmitted. That should be taken care by this particular communication protocol. Then we have flow control. That is nothing but the sender should not keep on sending the data packets that the receiver cannot handle. Okay, so that data rate, how fast the packets have been transmitted by the client to the server or the sender to the receiver, that is actually controlled by this particular flow control. And retransmission of lost packet, obviously if the packet is lost, we need to retransmit it. So all these three properties are taken care by this particular communication protocol. It has to take care of all these things. So this is all related to your communication protocol. And the last but not the least is embedded systems. We already discussed. What do you mean by embedded system? So the key components here are microprocessor. It requires a memory, networking unit, something Ethernet or Wi-Fi adapters, input-output units, forward with storage. Now, based upon these are the main key components which are required for your embedded system, and based on it, it actually functions. Now, apart from that, it also has some processors, specialized processors used for other purposes. That is what we call it as special processors, digital signal processors. Using these processors, well, these are not used for our what we call washing machine or micro oven kind of thing. Used for critical things. Critical means automated machines. Wherever we people are using automated machines, there we need to use such a kind of processor to make sure. And even using embedded systems, we people can run operating systems like RTOS, real-time operating systems can be used. Now, where we use this embedded system, these are some of the examples we have. Something called digital watches, digital cameras, point of sale terminal, vending machines. All these places we people can use this embedded system concepts. Okay, well, we'll stop here. Today's session will stop here. We'll just stop the recording.